Caitlin Clark isn't one of the 5 greatest women's college basketball players of all time, and it's because she didn't win a title.
ESPN recently argued that Caitlin Clark isn't considered an all-time great because she hasn't won a championship. Yet, they ranked Oscar Robertson 5th on their all-time college list, even though he didn't have a ring. It's frustrating to see men celebrated as legends without championships, while Clark is being held to a different standard. The double standard is hard to ignore.
Okay, so you just really honestly can't make this up, as it seems like the goalpost for the best college basketball player has shifted as Caitlin Clark has entered the conversation.
Caitlin Clark is changing the game for women's basketball, despite facing these unfair expectations. ESPN's all-time top 10 includes 6 men, 3 of whom never won a championship, yet Clark's back-to-back finals appearances are being treated like a failure. Get ready for some surprising stats that show how much Clark has achieved with less than almost any player in basketball history.
Here's the thing. Love Caitlin, love how she's transcended the game. I'm not going to go away from that, but in the open, we said, what makes a top 5 player? Winning. The only strike against Caitlin Clark is that she has not won a national championship. And that is the only thing that you can put against her.
ESPN recently released their top 5 women's college basketball players of all time, and guess who was left off the list? Caitlin Clark. The only reason they gave? She doesn't have a championship ring. That's their whole argument.
There is nobody who has been such a front-facing name. It's through a direct reflection of her skill set, but how can you be a top 5 player if you have not won a title?
It's a great point, which is why I agree with you. Convince me, Ari. We're switching them back.
This is absurd, especially when you consider the talent gap at Iowa compared to other championship programs. When you break down the numbers, it's mind-blowing. While Caitlin Clark was leading Iowa to back-to-back championship games, she had just one teammate who got drafted into the WNBA. Just one. Kate Martin was the only other Hawkeye to make it to the pros. That's it. Now, check this out.
I just want to say, I don't have anything against you if you don't think that Caitlin Clark is one of the top 5 basketball players of all time. But for the simple reason of not winning a championship, I do have to disagree. And here's why. And this is just my personal thought. I think that championships are definitely a team recognition. They are something that a team does together and accomplishes. In the instance of women's college basketball, there have always been the dominant teams. There's UConn, there is South Carolina, there is Tennessee, and at times there was USC back when Cheryl Miller was there. So this is very debatable.
Exactly. Caitlin Clark was basically David up against a team full of Goliaths, all while battling with very little support. Breanna Stewart at UConn, on the other hand, had a team stacked with future WNBA stars. Stewart played alongside what was essentially an all-star team, with professional talent at every position. Meanwhile, Clark was often playing 5-on-1, like the lone hero in an underdog sports movie, where everyone's relying on just one player to carry the team.
And I think that the fact that Caitlin Clark started on a team that really did not have exponential, mind-blowing talent existing and brought that team to a championship really says something about you as a player.
If you watch closely, you can see how much Caitlin Clark lifted her teammates' game. Her Iowa teammates showed impressive improvement just by playing alongside her. Their shooting percentages went up, their confidence grew, and they started getting better shots thanks to the attention Clark drew from defenders. She wasn't just scoring, she was making everyone around her better.
I think it's pretty ridiculous that they created the standard for how good a player is based on what the accomplishments a team does. And while, yes, it is probably the most important thing to win a championship because you do want to work together with your team to accomplish something so great, the idea that it has to be the measure of your individual success, I think is really discounting what an individual player can do, potentially put on a different team.
Let's be real about something else too. Before Caitlin Clark arrived, when was the last time you heard anyone talk about Iowa women's basketball as a championship contender? Clark completely transformed a program with little championship history into a powerhouse. Taking a team with almost no Final Four pedigree to back-to-back finals is like turning water into wine in the world of basketball.
I believe Larry Bird is an all-time great college player.
Yes.
Okay, well, he didn't win it.
This situation is a lot like Larry Bird's legendary journey at Indiana State. Bird never won a college championship either, but he's still widely regarded as one of the greatest college players ever because he did more with less. The same can be said for Caitlin Clark. She's making a huge impact, even without a title, by achieving greatness with limited resources.
And Breanna Stewart is very interesting to talk about because I have been watching Unrivaled, a league that she co-founded with Nafisa Collier, and they did not have the opportunity to put themselves on what you would call a blue blood team, and they were kind of randomly placed together by the current coaches of the Unrivaled team now. And I gotta say, the Mist, which is Breanna Stewart's team, is the second to worst team in Unrivaled.
Meanwhile, South Carolina's championship roster was packed with multiple five-star recruits, future WNBA draft picks, and players who were top prospects in their high school class. The playing field wasn't just uneven, it was completely lopsided. Now, consider it from this angle.
I myself have always had a little bit of a problem with ranking players based on having a ring because it doesn't give everybody the same individual recognition for their talents. And if you are not recruited to a team that, we can call it blue blood team, that doesn't have all the facilities, that doesn't have all the coaching staff, the things that bring teams to higher levels and create a little bit of like an unbalanced playing field like per team, I basically just see it as a bit of an unfair way just to rank a player's potential.
Here's the thing. Breanna Stewart won a championship surrounded. Look at Stewart's performance in the league right now. Despite being one of the top players in women's basketball, her team is near the bottom of the standings. This shows that no matter how great a player is, they can't single-handedly elevate a team to championship level without the right supporting cast.
Because I just found a 4-year-old video from SportsCenter/ESPN where they did rank the top 10 college basketball players of all time.
When we evaluate individual greatness, we should ask, did this player make the most of the talent around them? Did they elevate their program? What Caitlin Clark achieved at Iowa, taking a non-traditional team to back-to-back championship games with minimal support, might actually be more impressive than winning titles with a roster full of future pros.
One of our top 10 college basketball players of all time, Oscar Robertson, averaged just under 34 points a game over his career, third highest in D1 history. D1's leading scorer in each of his 3 seasons. He played average over 15 rebounds a game for his career, amassed 79 career double-doubles.
If we take a look at ESPN's own top 10 college basketball players list from just a few years ago, which included both men and women, they had no problem ranking 3 men who never won championships. That's right, the same ESPN that's disqualifying Caitlin Clark for not having a ring had no issue celebrating men without one. Let's break down this double standard. On their SportsCenter list, they ranked 6 men and 4 women as the greatest college basketball players ever. And guess who made the list? Oscar Robertson at number 5, no championship. Pete Maravich at number 3, no championship. Ralph Sampson at number 9, also no championship. So why the double standard?
I don't know what the difference is between then and now and why it has to be. Actually, every single woman that they mention in here also has natties, but it just seems, I'm not here rah feminist anything, but I feel like the idea of showing Caitlin Clark more praise than other people is something that is very hard for the mainstream media and a lot of other people that are not fans of Caitlin Clark to do.
The way Oscar Robertson is treated compared to Caitlin Clark is especially telling. The Big O averaged nearly 34 points and 15 rebounds per game during his college career. Absolutely mind-blowing numbers. But when ESPN talked about his ranking, they only mentioned his lack of a championship as something that kept him from being ranked higher, not something that disqualified him completely. Can you believe that hypocrisy?
Caitlin Clark has set records in college that have not been broken. Caitlin Clark is the all-time leading scorer in points in men's or women.
Before Caitlin Clark came along, Oscar Robertson was Division I's all-time leading scorer with 3,667 points. ESPN celebrated him as the third greatest college player ever, despite never winning a championship. They praised his scoring ability and individual brilliance without question. But when it comes to Clark, who not only broke his long-standing scoring record, but also revolutionized the women's game, suddenly a championship is the only thing that counts.
Clark was on an Iowa team who had never been to a national championship and got them there twice. Not once, but twice. This is not a team with any stars around her, but it is undeniable that this one person raised everybody up and brought them to that level.
And what about Ralph Sampson, ranked number 9? ESPN pointed out his lack of a national title as the only reason he wasn't ranked higher, yet they still recognized his individual greatness as worthy of being in the top 10 of all time. But somehow, Caitlin Clark's individual accomplishments, becoming the all-time leading scorer for both men and women, while also being a 3-time scoring and assist leader, aren't enough to land her in the top 5 women's list. How does that make sense?
I do find it interesting that they do tout off all her accomplishments, records that have not been broken by anybody else, and they still cannot consider her in the top 5 best category. And their ranking is that Breanna Stewart is the number 1 best college basketball player of all time. The number 2 best basketball player is Candace Parker, and then they have Diana Taurasi, and then they have Maya Moore, and then in that 5th slot, they slot in Cheryl Miller. And this is great company to be in, for sure. And if you think that these players are better than Caitlin Clark, like, I don't have anything against that aspect of it. I'm just not obsessed with the argument, especially for somebody who went to a team like Iowa, who did not have, championship experience, who did not have star